Hello, good evening. My name is Baillor Jalloh, and welcome to this special edition of African Voices platform, Guinea, the Way Forward. This week marks the one-year anniversary since Guinea's junta, led by Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, overthrew former President Alpha Conde in what was then described as the new era for Guinea. Just hours when the coup d'etat came to light, thousands of Guineans took to the streets of Conakry and other parts of the country to welcome the new government. At the time, Guinea's new strongman and his special forces promised changes. They promised the mistakes that happened in the country in the last 50 years will never be repeated again. Political prisoners were released. Politicians that were barred from traveling abroad were handed back their passports and allowed to travel. However, in recent weeks or months, 8 people have been killed, allegedly by security forces during violent protests. The junta have been accused by the opposition and other civil society groups in the country of wanting to cling to power and refusing to call for a sincere dialogue. Meanwhile, Colonel Doumbouya and his special forces have said they need at least 3 years in order to clear the mess and create proper institutions that can conduct a free and fair election. So tonight, my guest star, joining from London, is Cherif Bah, the Information Secretary for the National Front for the Defense of the Constitution, an organization that has been fighting for the restoration of democracy in Guinea since 2018. Good evening, Mr. Cherif Bah, and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Mr. Baillor. Good evening to your guests. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And joining us from Paris is Mr. Cherif Bah, who is responsible for ethics and good governance for the Democratic Alliance Movement, a party in Guinea. Good evening, Mr. Bah.
Good evening, Mr. Baillor. Thank you for having me, and good evening to all your guests.
And joining us from Conakry is Mr. Mamadou Aliou, who is the president of an NGO called Green Vision, and he is also a consultant in health and safety, environment, and community development. Good evening, Mr. Aliou.
Good evening, Mr. Jalloh. Good evening to your guests, and thank you for having me again on this platform.
Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate your time this evening, joining me from various locations to discuss Guinea, the way forward. As I stated at the beginning, it's the one-year anniversary since Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya overthrew former President Alpha Conde. At the time, many Guineans, especially the FNDC, rallied to support him. But 12 months down the line, minds have started to change. So if I may start with you, Mr. Cherif Bah from London. How will you describe the one-year anniversary? What's your summary of it?
Thank you so much, Mr. Jalloh. Once again, thank you so much for having me in this debate. As you mentioned it earlier, in the early hours of the 5th of September 2021, the Republic of Guinea rose with a sign, a new light of hope. A sign of hope with a new face, a face of a military junta called Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya. He overthrew the former President Alpha Conde. Every single Guinean, regardless of the ethnic background, regardless of their religion, sex, gender, everybody was jubilated. So on his message, there was a lot of promises, beautiful promises that the Guinean were looking forward to see throughout the journey. But today, nearly one year later, is just a disappointment. because it looks like only dreams were sold to the Guinean. One of the key points of the message that Mr. Doumbouya sent to the Guinean and the international community was that the mistake of the past would not be repeated. But that has been said today is more or less the same mistake or more that we are living in Guinea. If we talk about the past of the mistakes of the past, we're talking about the exile of the political leaders. We're talking about the people's opinion that are in jail. We're talking about the deprivation of the public of their right, the right to demonstrate, and also today is a total a formal dictatorship happening in Guinea. And the only thing that the Guinean people and the people's opinion and the political leaders are asking is one simple thing, is just to open a dialogue. A dialogue is to have everyone around the table to discuss the way forward of the transition in order to see Guinea through, to see through in a peaceful way, in a consultational way for the benefit of Guinea and its people. So at the moment is a disappointment, but we hope this 365th day, which is the anniversary, will serve as how I can say it, will serve a lesson whereby the junta and the government members will sit and also analyze their step forward. Therefore, we invite again and one more time the junta, led by the Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, to open the dialogue so that the transition can go smoothly. Thank you.
So before I bring the other two guests in, at the time of the coup d'etat, you were one of the people or one of the organizations, your organization, the FNDC, was one of the people that rallied for the junta. You traveled across West Africa for the junta to be recognized, in which case that the junta or the coup d'etat was justified. But now, 12 months down the line, why are you changing? Are you saying now what you thought, or you didn't analyze things the way they came, or at the time they came, so you were not cautious?
Well, Mr. Jalloh, as we said, when the junta came, Guinea was in a very difficult situation. So where all rights were deprived to people. And Alpha Conde and his government were just exercising force. Hence why, as I said, in the early mornings of the 5th of September 2021, it was a sign of a new hope. That's the reason why everybody was jubilated. It is not only the FNDC that went out, just to run a rally towards, the ECOWAS, the African Union, the international community, other political leaders, everyone, every single Guinean, and honestly went out and to meet these people in order to reassure them this was a hope, it was a sign of hope, whereby everybody should have signed allegiance to see Guinea sail through and to see Guinea returning, just to the root of democracy. So, but suddenly, what we're seeing at the moment is just the violence that, everybody has seen. When they arrested the leader of the FNDC, Fonike Mange. And let me say, Mr. Jalloh, just present my sincere condolences to the entire families who lost their loved ones. To those in prison, they also have our support. So this is not what we were expecting. So as I say, the hope is broken. That's the reason why we believe the dream that was sold to the Guineans on the 5th of September 2021 has just faded. Therefore, it's time to face the truth. It's time to help the junta. It's still time there is a room to maneuver in order to rectify the line the junta is taking the transition towards. So the justice is not the one we were expecting. The freedom is not the one we were expecting. The promises are not the one that we were given. Therefore, we say it's just a dream that was sold to the Guinean people.
Okay, let me bring in Cherif Bah from Paris, who is a member of the Democratic Alliance Movement, or DAM, which is a political party in Guinea-Conakry. Jan, you've heard what Mr. Cherif Bah has said, and also as a Guinean and as a member of a political party, what's your party take on all this?
Hello again, Mr. Baillor. As I said earlier, thank you for having me here. And it's always a pleasure for me to intervene on this channel. First of all, I would like to present my deepest condolences to the families of those who have lost their life during the last protests. I pray to God that their soul rests in peace, and I hope that in the nearest future, Guineans will find a way, a path that they could sort their differences out without anyone losing their life. And secondly, I would like to present my condolences to Mr. Aliou, who's lost recently his father in Guinea. I hope he rests in peace. May Almighty God accept him in heaven. Amen.
Thank you very much.
And now, coming to your question, Mr. Baillor. And I think, as you said previously, this coup d'etat was welcome. And it's not the first one. We should know that Guinea has a cultural, it's been known culturally for a country that coup d'etats happen nearly all the time after each regime. If we think of the background a little bit.
But this is the first coup d'etat that took place in Guinea when a president was alive, and for the president to be still alive.
Exactly.
If I'm not mistaken.
That's where I'm coming from. That's where I'm heading to. In 1984, when Sékou Touré passed away, we had a coup d'etat. And then the first election, we had 9 years of transition from 1984 to 1993, 9 years of transition, when General Lansana Conte came into power. And he stayed there. The fact that he modified the constitution and remained in power till his last days. When he passed away, we had another coup d'etat from the CNDD. And we all know what happened during that protest on the 28th of September in Guinea's biggest stadium, in which we lost hundreds of lives. And then that action jeopardized Mr. President Dadi's power. And afterward, Sékou Bah Konaté came into power, and then he conducted the election through which Alpha Conde won.
Dian, sorry to interrupt you there. Because we don't have much time, I just wanted you to focus on the current coup d'etat by the CNRD or Colonel Doumbouya, the one that is unfolding right now. What's your party take on the current coup d'etat or the way things are unfolding in Guinea with the political crisis in Guinea?
Yeah, Mr. Baillor, I rather want answer completely one question than jumping on 10 questions. You highlighting the symptoms. I want to go to the sources, you know. And as I said, when the election was organized, Alpha Conde came into power, and we had this constitution issue. And then Alpha Conde modified the constitution to remain in power. That's the reason why the CNRD, this recent junta, did the coup d'etat. And we all call for this coup d'etat and will welcome it. At the early days of the coup d'etat, my political party wrote a statement, a proposal on how we should unfold the steps of the transition in the way that by the end, each and everyone will be happy. Surely there have been a lot of mismanagement and misleading, but there have been good points as well since the CNRD came into power. You know, if we balance it, there have been positive and negative side. We have some positive side because 42 generals been retired, more than 6,000 public workers, including thousands of fake virtual public workers that were receiving salary, are taken out of the system. Millions of dollars have been recovered, and that money is being injected back into the economy, the country's economy. The other side, they have been mismanagement.
Is that the work of a military?
Exactly. That's from the CNRD took power the 5th September, last September to now. You know, that happened in between. In November, they did they sent to retirement 40 general, 1,000 of military, and in December, 6,300 workers, public workers, including fake workers, were retired as well. You know, that's a good side of it. However, in the other side, there have been some mismanagement and some abuse of power, you know, and we could go on that. But what I wanted to say about this, as a political party, we've already submitted our proposal to the government.
Where does your party stand? That's my question. Where does your party stand? There are people calling for protests in the country, other political parties saying the CNRD should only stay for 2 years. And the CNRD are saying they want to stay for 3 years. Where does your political party stand on this?
My political party suggested 2 years, 24 months. However, I think we're making problem where there shouldn't be any. The 10 steps of the transition that were highlighted by the junta, we can do it in 24 months. You know what I mean? We just need to sit down and talk. That's the issue. That's the dialogue. However, that sitting down, that dialogue should be done in the CNT, which represent the National Assembly now. But the fact that the political parties are misrepresented in that organization, that's why we're asking for a dialogue, a different dialogue, because political parties think that they've been misrepresented in that CNT. If that CNT reflected, you know, the national organization, political and civilian body, there shouldn't be a protest. There shouldn't be anyone calling for dialogue.
Okay, let me bring in Aliou from Conakry, who is currently in the field. He's in Conakry because where most of the protest happens, it happens to be in Conakry. Aliou, we know that this week the FNDC are calling for a protest to mark the anniversary, to show or to vent their frustration on the junta, that what the junta are doing, they are not happy with it. So since the last time we spoke, what has changed, be it good or bad?
Thank you very much, Mr. Baillor, and thank you, Dian, for the condolences from the bottom of the heart. And let me as well present my condolences to all those who have lost their loved ones during the protests. Coming to the question, when you asked me about the FNDC calling for another protest on that day and so on and on, and as for me, honestly, I'm against all those protests. I'm not agreeing with all those protests by the way that people are protesting and by the way that people are being repressed by the authorities. Because at the end of the day, it will be like a collusion and people will lose lives. And I hate that. And I'm not really going for that. And so if there is any other millions way that people can use or can choose to protest, to show that they are not okay with this or with the other one, and I agree with those, but not to go for confrontation. And that's one part of it.
What is bringing the confrontation? Why is the confrontation? Is it not because the military don't want any protest? They have banned all sorts of protests, and that was the reason why they said they did the coup d'etat?
Honestly, today, if people are calling for protests as an political observer on the ground, I will say all of those organizations, including the political parties, want to be part of this transition. Because anyhow, there is a share part, anyhow. So everybody wants to be a part of it. And nowadays, by the way that this transition is being ruled by the colonel, and they have realized that everything is going without them. So they say, okay, stop. We must be part of it. That's one side of it. And the other hand, the only thing that I will call for dialogue. I will call for this transition to open an inclusive dialogue and call everybody and sit on the table and talk about all the good side of this transition, what will be good for the country. But in the other hand, when we go to protests, really nowadays, I'm not talking about the 10 years that Alpha Conde was in power. People were protesting, people keep on dying. We have more than 200 or 300 people died. And now we started by the CNL as well. And people starting dying and so on and on. So why we don't think about any other aspects and try to not protest, try to not do any confrontation if there is any way? Because do not forget that when CNL came to power on the 5th of September, the opposition and all other organizations, including FNDC, we had something like 500 or 600 people that were jailed just for nothing. And when Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya came, he freed everybody. Everybody was freed. Nowadays, we can say there is no prisoner, no political prisoner. Officially,
okay. If you said there is no political prisoner, why is
I'm coming.
Jalloh and Saikou Yaya Jalloh are in prison?
No, I'm coming. Saikou Yaya is a politician. Ibrahim Jalloh is not a politician, as far as I know. He's not a politician. He is a member of FNDC. But Saikou Yaya is a politician. But I think he was acting on behalf of FNDC. And you know the repression that the junta is being repressive against the FNDC. You understand? I think recently he was acting on behalf of FNDC. And that's why, because FNDC was planning so many protests, and which was not really appreciated by the junta. Although I condemn all those violence, the fact people are being restricted and not having the freedom of speech or to protest. I condemn those. But even though also I condemn the fact that when people go on the ground to protest, people keeping dying, so on and on. And then let's
get Cherif Bah to respond to that. Cherif Bah, your organization, the FNDC, have been accused of calling for protest, and that has led to so many loss of lives and also the destruction of properties, which is, according to the current government, that's the reason why some members of your, why some people or from your organization have been arrested, including Fonike Mange and Ibrahim Jalloh.
Well, Mr. Jalloh, let's look at the bigger picture here. If there was no need of protest, why the coup itself? Because the coup was a protest. The protest was against corruption, against injustice, against, like the rule of what we call a dictatorship of Alpha Conde. So hence why one hand was happy to protest and outside the former president, and today refuse for the people to come out and exercise a right. This is a right.
But what the government is arguing, or what the CNRD is arguing, you are not doing peaceful protest.
I'm coming, Mr. Jalloh. First of all the protests that the FNDC, called upon, they are peaceful protests. They are not calling for protests. They are not calling for confrontation. They are not calling anyone to come and confront the army. All they are asking is to be accompanied by the army, to have the protests well structured in order from the point of the point of depart to the arrival point for everything to go smoothly. But hence-wise, for the simple fact that there are people out there, within the junta, we're not blaming the junta entirely, but for everything, you have to look at the head. So the junta is the head of this transition. Therefore, they are refusing to come to the dialogue, which is a problem. They are confiscating people's rights. It is a problem.
When you say they are refusing to come to come for a dialogue, from my understanding, there was a dialogue, but you had your options for attending the dialogue.
Certainly we had the options, but Mr. Jalloh, this debate that we're having now, you had the option to have other outsiders to be here. But for this debate to be fruitful, we are discussing with people that are well represented, that has knowledge and understanding of what is happening in Guinea at the moment. Therefore, we cannot take over 300 parties to bring on one table and debate, all right? For the past elections, we know who is really representative of the nation. You cannot bring me, like an example, bring me Mr. Bah, who has just an agreement as a politician and say that, okay, I need to sit and talk with somebody who has over 2 million people. We're not talking about discrimination, but we talk about representation. So we have to take the respect and the consideration in action also in order to have that dialogue. We're talking about dialogue, all right? We are not talking about just coming to share a coffee or tea. We're talking about national interest issues.
Let's see what Jamba has to say on that.
Just for me to finish, if you bear with me 1 second, I need just to come on board with what Mr. Aliou said. Mr. Yaya, who is in jail, was not acting on the behalf of the FNDC. He is a citizen as a whole. He had the right to protest. So putting that onto his account, I believe is something that Mr. Bah needs to rectify. Therefore, the people in jail, all right, are just, all right, detained for just exercising their right. Hence why, once again, we ask for a dialogue, an inclusive dialogue, a dialogue that is representative, not just a dialogue whereby nothing will be talking, just people to come. And what John said as well, the CNT, all right, the CNT is not fully representative of the nation. So therefore, they cannot speak on the behalf of the nation. Having them doesn't rule out a dialogue. Therefore, I believe we should all understand what the national interest is and act upon that. Thank you.
Jamba, what do you have to say on what Cherif Bah has just said? Bringing a political party or putting together political parties, over 200 political parties together, will take time, and also there will be no understanding into the dialogue. And also the fact that there are some parties that are very influential, that has got lots of people in the country, whereas there are some other parties in the country as well that has no influence or that doesn't have enough support there. Do you think those
Mr. Jalloh, it's not about the support. Sorry to interrupt you. It's not about the support or influence. We're talking about being representative of the nation.
The representation.
The dialogue is towards the action that will benefit the nation. It's not about
for you to be influential in the country, you have to have the support, or you have to have the people.
Indeed.
In that case, you know. So I'm just wondering, Jan, what do you have to say to that in terms of representation for all parties to be at the same table when their representation is not the same?
Mr. Baillor, I would like to, first of all, say that, as Mr. Cherif said, my political party just entered politics. So I would like to say that 2 years before Emmanuel Macron was elected, his political party was not known in France. And 2 years before his party, Mr. Cherif, UFDG, 2 years before the first election after the death of Alpha Conde.
You are not sure, Mr. Jiang, I'm with UFDG. So that is an assumption that you're making. Say my former, you're not sure if I was there or I'm still there. Thank you. I'm representing
in that case, let's talk about him as he is. He's representing FNDC.
There's no point to bring the UFDG on board.
He is representing the FNDC here.
The UFDG. Thank you.
I don't know why he doesn't want to talk about his political party, but it's okay. I thought like he's gonna assume it. But all right, let me just say 2 years before the election in 2010, the UFDG party was not very known. The leader was not known. How many supporters did they have? 2 years before Emmanuel Macron was elected. in France. He wasn't known. His political party wasn't known. If he said that what will be good for the people, that's what should be done, I think let's let the people, the Guinean people, judge and do it and speak out by their votes. It's not to me or to him or to someone else to disqualify a political party in a general talk. That's the problem. In Guinea, until some of Guineans stop thinking that they are more Guinean than others, we're still going to be in trouble. That's the main thing. And the second thing I would like to say about the protest, as you asked earlier, I am completely against the kind of protests that are going on in Guinea, because they have been abused by the side of the army and abused in the side of the civilians as well. The way in which we protest in Guinea is not a peaceful protest, and the way in which the army as well respond, we can say is bloody response. I think all of us, Guinea used to be a country that sought Africans' problem out. But nowadays, even to talk amounts between brothers or in family, we need to call for help. In this area, we call for help to the UN. I think that dishonor us as a Guinean, dishonor our institution, and doesn't value us at all. By the end, what I would like to say, each and every side, whether the CNFD or the political party, the civil society, we should all try to sit down and talk. No one should try to exclude the other. If Mr. Cherif is asking for some political party to be excluded, but he's been excluded and he's protesting against it, where is the logic?
Okay, so in that case, we've seen recently the current negotiator, Thomas Yayi Boni, the former president of Benin, coming to Guinea, and he was in Conakry just a week back. What's your take on his visit this time? Well, you know, we've seen some political parties that were content with the way things unfolded, but there are also some other political parties that were not happy. Where does your party stand on that?
Actually, I would say my political party position on that, I've said it earlier. I believe as a Guinean, we don't need Senegalese or Malian to talk among us. We can sit down and talk until we have.
So are you saying right now?
Just let me finish.
Hold on a sec. Are you saying no? Just hold on a sec, Jan. Are you saying right now you don't need any negotiator in Guinea, and the way things are unfolding, the way the military junta is ruling the country or are doing dialogue, you are happy with it?
Okay, I am not happy by the way the things are moving forward in Guinea. But until all of us, military, government, political, civil society, until we have the willingness of sitting down and talk, even if they bring Barack Obama or Donald Trump, it's not going to work. The problem is not the mediator. The problem is the Guineans. We cannot print or make different Guineans. That's the thing. It's always been like that. I think we should learn to sit down as Guinean and talk. This nation is a great nation. We've helped many African countries to sort out a problem. Why now, right now, we cannot sit down and talk? I think that's the question. It's not, okay. The mediator is not going to do, it's not, I don't think his job will impact in any way the transition, because some people might not be happy in one side or the other, and then protests will continue. If we said whatever is going on in France right now, when the population is not happy, we have to protest, or in the UK, everyone has to go out because bills are raising, or in the United States, gas is raising up, we have to go out and protest. Where are we going to move? We need to sit down and talk, and until we have the willingness to do so, we're not going to move forward.
Okay, Aliou, if I may bring you back in again, we don't have much time. We got a few minutes to go, but right now, as we stated earlier, there is a planned protest, and also we've seen since the junta took over, unfortunately, 8 people have lost their lives, and and all of them, or most of them, in the Komindi Ratoma area. And at the time the junta took over, they said the mistakes of the past will not be repeated. And if you look at mathematically, the people that have died in just a year, if you put that together into the amount of people that died in 10 years during Alpha Conde's regime, that means mathematically the junta have killed more people compared to Alpha Conde. So what do you think should be the solution here?
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Jalloh, I think you will not go for the shortcut for all those things that have happened in the country. And then when I come to the politicians, for instance, Cherif Bah and Mr. Cherif, and let me say thank you for Mr. Cherif for trying to correct me, but I know that Saikuyaya is FNDC politic anyway, however. But let me say, the way that politics is being used or practiced in this country, you see even between Dian and Mr. Cherif, they're going to collusion, they're going to interact between them, and it's not going to work. It's just like in this country, politics has taken over our brain in this country. It's just, unfortunately, that's how it is in the country. And then, but when you come to say that people are being killed in the, that's fact.
I just want you to summarize because we've got about 3 minutes to go.
All right.
I want to bring each and every one of you guys to have a final word.
All right, people are being killed, and you said that is in the same area and stuff like that. But when you come, it's because maybe actually the area that's called the axe is the area that is protesting against and so on. When you go back, when Alpha Conde was here.
But don't you think that was the same area that welcomed the junta when the junta took over out of the 6 communes of Conakry?
No,
that was the only place the junta could come to parade the former president.
Mr. Jalloh, it has nothing to do with that. When Lansana Conte was here, the hottest zone in this country or in Conakry here was the Kas, Medina, and Sigiri and Kankan. That's how it is. The junta is not targeting people on the axe and saying that it's because that those people are the ones that are protesting much more and more. Other people are against the regime, this transition. For instance, what you say from the autoroute and other areas, Matoto, and they're all against this transition because they were on the power, but they're using other way to protest or to show their anger instead of going on the streets. That's what I wanted FNDC to choose, or the acts or FNDC members to choose and use other way to protest instead of going on the streets and having confrontation and people getting killed.
Okay, let's bring Mr. Cherif in. Mr. Cherif, your final word. What should be the way forward for Guinea in order for a peaceful transition and also to stop the killings or the arrest of people in the country, just briefly? And also just to correct Mr. Bade, I didn't say they were targeting one area. I just said why it was only one area where people were getting killed.
Yeah, what I'm saying again, there is not one area. The protest is all over the country, as you said, it's just different forms. Dalaba is not within that zone. If you talk about Labe, it's not within that zone. Mamung is not within that zone. There was protest at the same time. But if you look at it properly, we're not trying to, be radical here, but we're trying to be honest, because if you're not honest, we're not helping the country. So before the protests in that zone, there was other protests in the country, but we didn't encounter any deaths. Yeah. So at the moment, we deplore the fact that, the militarization of the zone. Go to that part of the country, see the amount of military unit that is posted in that zone. Is that something fair? No. We should treat the Guineans equally and fairly. That's all we're asking.
But your organization have been dismantled, but yet you are still calling for protest.
Well, the organization could not be dismantled. They can say, as I said, this is a sign that demonstrates that the junta is just using an excessive force. They just want to oppress those they want to oppress. Therefore, what we want is a peaceful transition. We want a successful transition. So if there was not a will to go towards a peaceful and successful transition, no one would have asked for the CNRD to come forward for a dialogue. So we would have asked
no
for
problem.
over the country.
Dian, a final word from you, just briefly.
Quickly, before I give you the thing, if you don't mind, Mr. Jalloh, I just say to Mr. Aliou, my deepest and sincere condolences for his loss.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Just a quick word.
Yeah, my quick word is that I think I question the type of democracy, the type of governance that we use in our countries. I think we should think about a system of governance that it's really in phase, that fits our identity and values. Because this democracy that we're using right now in most of the African countries, especially in Guinea, is not helping us. When we think about the more we move forward, the more the democracy moves backward. And in order to sort that out, we should sit down and talk and find a way to move forward together.
Well, that's all we've got time for tonight. Join us again next week at the same time. Until then, thank you for listening and watching. This was African Voices Platform, presented by me, Baillor Jalloh.